Greetings to you and welcome to this episode of Grace Podcast. I'm Timothy Muse. I'll be your host as we spend this time together today. It's a joy to be with you. I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for making this podcast a part of your day. And I also want to thank you always for being on this journey, for growing and healing and expanding and looking to bring energy to places in your life that need it. Good for you for being here and good for you for taking the time and the investment to do you and invest in you. Again, we can so often want to empty ourselves, pour into everybody else's cup, and that's so important. It's so needed. But if we don't pay attention to ourselves, if we don't pour into our own cups, if we don't give our own experience, then our own experience, time, and energy, then we can become empty. And when we become empty, then we can't really participate in the life and growth of others. So good for you for being here. Good for you for taking this time and this energy. If this podcast is helpful, please share it out there. Put it out there on your social media feeds. I post on LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and Facebook. If you follow me or the life coaching on any one of those feeds, you're going to see these episodes. Share it. Tag me in it. Love to see where you're at. I really would. I'd love to see where you're listening at, and I'd love to see these episodes get in the hands of others. If you are on one of the listening platforms, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or Amazon Music, follow us, give us a rating and review. Every time a positive rating and review comes out, the platform sees that people are listening and they put it out in front of other people. And that's what I want. I want to see this grow and be part of someone else's life. And it will give you a notification when a new episode comes out. And if you want to reach out to me directly, GraceLifeCoaching.com is the website. I would love to hear from you. If you want to do some coaching, some Reiki, some sound bath, whatever, I really, truly would love to hear from you. GraceLifeCoaching.com is the website. So we have been going into this session around friendships, the power of friendship, the importance of friendships. And I want to keep moving in that. We've talked about building strong friendships, understanding their values, becoming a better friend, practicing vulnerability, and showing up during hard times. Today, I want to go in something deeper, something common but deeply emotional, and something that we often don't talk about. There's shame in it, there's confusion in it, and that is what happens when friendships change. What happens when they drift apart? If you've lived long enough, you've experienced this. A friendship that was once felt strong and then it begins to fade. Conversations that become less frequent, connections that become less frequent. Time together becomes rare and the connection starts to change. We've all experienced this in life. We've all had this happen. And sometimes without a clear moment or explanation, the friendship feels different. It feels distant. They can be confusing and it can be disappointing. Sometimes we can even feel a loss or a grief around that. Something that's changed between people that were so strong and now they just aren't. It's happened to us all. It's happened to everyone. I can think of people in my life that were really, really close that aren't as close anymore. And not because something drastic happened or something broken happened. It just happens. One of the most important truths to understand in this when we deal with friendships is not all friendships are meant to last forever in the same way. Not all friendships are meant to last forever in the same way. It's just the nature of life. Life is constantly changing. Change is the constant in our life. If we can guarantee one thing in life, the change is going to happen. Our bodies change, the nature changes, the grocery store stock aisles change, everything changes. Change is the natural progression, okay? So life is constantly changing. People grow. People grow in different directions. They latch on to new hobbies or new ideas. Circumstances shift. Life circumstances shift. Jobs change, expectations change, kids, family, work, health, all those things change. Circumstances shift. Priorities evolve. What was once important is not as important anymore. I think all of us can remember, a point in our lives when it was important to go out and have fun and party and hang out in the bars, and then priorities shift. Health, sleep, family, those happen. We all have those seasons, those changes. Think about the different seasons in your life that you've experienced so far. School, you had school friends, childhood friends, early adulthood, and then get into a career, and maybe those careers have changed. Maybe you're in one career or another, or one workplace and another. Family life changes. We start to date, we get married, we have kids, our parents age, our kids grow up. Family life changes, new responsibilities come in. Each season introduces new demands and new environments. It's just the nature of it. And with those changes, relationships often shift as well. Some friendships grow stronger. Some friendships have that connection and they grow stronger, and others naturally just become less central. Now, look, here's the truth of it. This isn't a failure. This is not a failure of being a friend. This is not a failure of you. Sometimes it's simply the result of life moving forward. Sometimes it's just simply the result of life evolving into the next level, of you evolving into the next level of who you are as a person. Values shift. Identity shifts. And in that shift, some people move in and some people move out. It is just the natural way of life. It is the way that the seasons of our life go. And so there are, when we talk about seasons, we will talk about the different friendship seasons, the different important in that. It's helpful to think about friendships in terms of seasons. Seasons ebb and flow, like winter into spring, spring into summer, summer into fall. So when we think about friendships as, seasonally, and how there can be seasonal identity to our friendships and our connection. We have our lifelong friendships, okay? These are rare and incredibly valued. They endure through multiple stages of life. They endure through all of the things that I talked about. Every time, that passes, every season that comes along, they're there. Even without frequent contact, the connection remains strong. We often want to think that the strong friendships require constant contact. Not all the time. Strong friendships can have an ebb and flow in contact, but they matter. When you connect again, it feels natural. These friendships are built on deep trust and shared history, something that extends over long periods of time. We have those people in our lives, those lifelong friends. And we have seasonal friendships. Some friendships are closely tied to specific seasons in our life. School friendships. They were strong when we were in school, when we were in a combined experience, but those friendships fade. Workplace friendships. Those friendships were there when you worked in that spot, in that time. Shared experience, shared time together, but they fade. Shared activity friendships. We do something for a time, a season. Maybe it's model trains or play softball or whatever. And then when that season comes to an end, when that activity comes to an end, those friendships just naturally fade. When the season changes, the connection naturally shifts. And that's okay. It really, truly is. It is okay to have that natural shift in connection when seasons change. Not every meaningful friendship is meant to continue in the same way forever. That's just how it works. And then we have situational friendships. These are friendships built around a shared environment or experience. Okay, singular, a class or a job, a project or a community group. We come into someone's circle and we're there for a short period of time over a particular situation. And then when that situation changes, the friendship fades. Again, this is not a negative. This is not a negative thing. This is not a failure. They serve a purpose during a time. And I know that sounds kind of selfish, and it's not really meant to be selfish, but there's a purpose for that connection, that friendship in that time, but that time has finished. And so the purpose for that friendship just automatically fades out. You ever see in Hollywood, we see actors and actresses that they do a film together, they do a shoot together, and then they fall in love and they get married. And then after a short period of time, that marriage comes to an end. Sometimes they endure and it's great, but a lot of times they come to an end because that was a situational circumstance. They spent a great deal of time together over a short period of time. The intensity of it created this bond. Well, the belief is the bond then is to be perpetual, but it's not always perpetual. Situational friendships revolve around a circumstance or an environment, a shared circumstance or environment. But when that circumstance or environment changes, so does the nature of the friendship. And that is okay. It is not a negative. There's not guilt or shame that should be connected to that. That is just the natural way things happen. When we think about friendships that drift apart, when we think about things like that, there are some common reasons friendships change. There are some common reasons, and they're just out there. And it's important because maybe you're thinking about a friend that maybe you've drifted apart or something's changed. Like, what happened? What happened? Well, look at the situations. Look at the things that are happening in your life, and maybe you can identify what's happened. One is a life transition. Moving to a new location. We're very transient people. in our culture. We don't spend all of our lives. It's very rare. I shouldn't say we don't. It's very rare to be born, to grow up, to get an education or get a job, work in the same community you grew up in, buy a house down the street from your parents, live in that community all your life, know all of your childhood friends. It's very rare. So moving to a new location is something that's very common. Starting a new job, starting a career in a different place, entering a new stage in life, such as having kids or maybe a health circumstance or aging. I always say that, about every 10 years, we change and evolve who we are. So who we are at 20 is not who we were at 10. Who we are as 30 is not who we were when we were 20. And that transition, it's a natural thing. It's how we grow and learn. So when we enter into these new stages of life, maybe a friend that was in that old stage just doesn't connect the same. Transitions can shift priorities and time availability. When you're in your 20s and you're single and you're able to go out and have fun and Friday night, but then start dating or get married, now there's different time expectations. And availability is different. Not to say that they shouldn't be there, but understanding that life transitions create patterns and expectations, and they can change. And they can bring about change in friendships. Another one is the different growth paths. Sometimes people just grow in different directions. And we do. As we grow as individuals, as we learn, as we experience, we grow in different directions. Maybe it's politically, maybe it's religiously, maybe it's value-oriented. But we just grow in different directions. One person may pursue new goals or new habits or new values, something to enhance themselves or change their identity that may not grow with the other person. The other remains in a different place. Over time, this creates distance. It does. Again, it's not to say that the person is malevolent or the relationship is broken. It's just the natural course of who we are as humans. We grow in different paths. We walk alongside people for a period of time, and then our paths separate. And that's just it. Another one is lack of intentional effort. Friendships take effort. They do. They require maintenance. They require connection. They require reaching out. Without communication and time investment, again, and even if you're in a different city or a different place, we still have this beautiful, wonderful connection capability. But without that intentional effort, then friendships can wane. They can weaken. Life gets busy. Schedules get filled up. Without intentional effort, distance increases. So if there are friendships that you want strong and want to keep strong, then there needs to be some intentional effort. It doesn't have to be a lot, but that continual connection, one to the other. And sometimes there's just unresolved tension. Sometimes friendships drift because of unresolved conflict. And it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be big. It can be something small, like a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding around a conversation or a schedule or a hurt feeling. Our feelings can get hurt, especially if we invest time in people and we lean into them, and our feelings can get hurt. A conversation that never happened. It needed to happen. We needed to talk about ... but we never did. Silence can slowly replace connection. So unresolved tensions can be part of how friendships drift apart and how people separate. Now, look, whatever the reason, whatever that's behind it, when friendships change, it can bring unexpected emotions. It can bring up unexpected ones. So these are people that are important. They're valued. They have meaning. So when friendships change, things like disappointment or confusion or sadness or even grief, these are important relationships to us. And when friendships change, it can bring about these emotions. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is part of the process. When we experience something that is a loss, we have disappointment and maybe confusion and sadness. And even grief, because the relationship mattered. They matter. Relationships hold memory. They hold shared experiences. They hold emotional connection. Because friendships have meaning, when they change, it can bring unexpected emotions. And when that happens, we feel that loss. We feel like we're losing something important. It's important to acknowledge those feelings. It's important to acknowledge that because they are valid. They are valid within ourselves. We want to make sure that we acknowledge our emotions because they are valid. We may not agree with them or like them, but they're valid. And one of the ways that we process them through, this is a big thing about emotional processing. One of the ways that we process through our emotions is to acknowledge them and give them validity because they're there. I have heard so many people say, I'm angry about this. I shouldn't be. Well, you are. So whether you should be or shouldn't be doesn't really matter. What matters is you are. So acknowledge it, give it validity, focus on it, give it some attention, and then let it wane. But when we invalidate our emotions, it really does create an imbalance inside of us. It creates a lack of trust in us. Well, I really don't know how to feel because my emotions are invalid. No, they're valid. Even if they don't necessarily seem necessary or right, they're valid. And when we validate them, we're able to move through them. And when we have those emotions, when we experience those emotions, when friendships do change, then it leads us into some form of discernment, some form of question. Would we reconnect? Or do we want to release? That's really the thing. When we come to these emotional states where it's like, wow, this friendship really mattered to me, and now it's a loss, and I feel these emotions. So then that leads us to a question: is this something that I should reconnect with, or is this something that I just need to process through the emotions and let go? And that's called discernment. We discern: are we going to reconnect, or are we going to release? It's one of the most important skills in adult friendships is discernment, knowing when to lean in and knowing when to let go. Okay? Those are the things. Those are the powerful questions. The powerful questions we ask. Is this friendship still healthy? Is there mutual effort? Even though it may have weakened, is this still valid? Is this still important to me? Would reconnecting bring value to both them and myself? When we answer those questions, we say, yes, this is still a healthy friendship. And yes, there is mutual effort here. And yes, reconnecting would bring value to both of us. Then that's when we reconnect. That's when we lean in. That's when we say, okay, I'm going to put a little bit of energy into this and see if we can rekindle the fire. I'm going to poke the logs and see if the flame comes back out. Or has this friendship naturally reached the end of its season? Some friendships are worth rekindling, and a simple conversation can restore that connection. And other friendships may be best remembered with appreciation for what they were, but then letting them go. And again, letting go of a friendship that was there for a season or a situation doesn't mean something failed. It's not a failure. It means that the relationship fulfilled a purpose for the time. It means it had its meaning, its run, its purpose, and now it's time to let it go. Let it flow, let it ebb, and let go. If that's where you are, if you're in a place where you realize there's reconnection, then reconnect. Make that effort. Remember, I said intentional effort. So make that effort. But if it's something to let go, then let go with gratitude. Let go with gratitude for what was there. If a friendship has come to an end or changed significantly, one of the healthiest approaches is to let it go with gratitude and not resentment. Instead of focusing on what was lost, focus on what the friendship gave you, okay? Instead of focusing on what was lost, focus on what the friendship gave you, the experiences, the lessons, the support during that season or that situation. Gratitude allows us to move forward without carrying unnecessary emotional weight. You know what? That was a great time. We had a great time together. They're great people, and I wish them well, and I enjoyed their time, and I enjoyed their company, but that's just not where we are anymore. That's just not the place we are in life anymore. That's not where I am. That's not where they are. So I'm going to release it. I'm going to release it with joy. I'm going to release it with gratitude, and I'm going to let it go. And you know what? Maybe down the road, maybe someday that friendship will intersect again. Maybe we will reconnect. And if that happens, awesome. Great, incredible. If it doesn't happen, well, then I'm secure in my emotional stance with that. I'm secure in myself with that. And I'm able to let it go. I'm able to release it into who I want to become. But I want to do it with gratitude. I want to remember them well. Yeah, I remember those times. They were great. I remember those experiences. They were great. They're really great people. They're just not in my connection at this point in time. The energy just isn't there to do it. So as we come close to the end of this session, I would ask some really important questions. I'd invite you to take a moment to reflect. Is there a friendship in your life that has changed recently? Is there someone that is in your circle that has changed recently? Is this something worth reconnecting with? Is this person worth reconnecting with? Is this person worth the investment? And I shouldn't say the person. The person always has worth. The relationship. Is the relationship worth reconnecting with? Or is it something that I want to release with appreciation? What did this friendship teach you? These reflections can bring clarity. Again, going back to that discernment, asking those questions. Is there someone in my life that the relationship has changed? Is there something worth reconnecting in that relationship? Is there something to give the initial investment and intention to do that? Or is this something that I just need to release with appreciation? Maybe it'll swing back around, maybe it'll curve back around, maybe it won't. But I really appreciate that person for what they taught me and how they walked with me and how I was able to walk with them, and move through that. If there is a friendship that is drifted, decide intentionally. Again, all about intentionality. Don't let things just linger. Well, I'll get to that friendship one time. No, be intentional. Do you want to reconnect? If you want to reconnect, then reach out. Take the step. Don't wait for them, because they may be, buried in their own identity and really needing that push. If you want to reconnect. Reach out. Send a message. Start a conversation. If not, take a moment to reflect on the positive impact that friendship had on your life. Maybe write it down, or, go out and have a cup of coffee in their honor, or what have you. Gratitude creates closure. It really does. So be intentional with your friendships. Be intentional. Don't let meaningful relationships fade simply because life is busy. And at the same time, allow space for relationships to change without guilt. Both are part of a healthy life. Remember, things go through seasons. Some remain, some change, some come to an end, and each one plays a role in shaping who we are becoming in our life. Learning to navigate those changes with wisdom, clarity, and gratitude allows us to build healthier relationships moving forward. That's what I got for you for today, my friends. If it is helpful, please share it out there. Put it out there on your social media feeds. Put it out there on the listening platforms. If you want to reach out to me directly, GraceLifeCoaching.com is the website. I truly would love to hear from you. At Grace Life Coaching, we want you to be the best you.